How does the LSU defense solve the riddle that is Lincoln Riley? We're talking about it. It's Locked on LSU. Let's go.
You are Locked on LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. We're glad to have you aboard with us here. Thanks for making us your first listen every single day. We are free, available wherever you get podcasts. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Lot to get into today. Shea Dixon stops by for his weekly recruiting chat. It is game week, so how does LSU use this LSU USC game for recruiting purposes? We'll delve into that. One of the big questions we've had all throughout fall camp is punting. It's game week. How big of a concern is it? We'll delve into that here shortly. You'll hear what Brian Kelly had to say. But I told you this was coming, and I want to start here today because as we have talked so much about this LSU defense and what we all hope are real sincere improvements that they've made throughout fall camp and at this point up into this season, I think we are going to see an improved LSU defense, as we've talked about. I think the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. I think Blake Baker has gotten them playing fast and free and loose by simplifying things. I think you've added some key additions. Jair Brown, I think, is going to be your starting nickel. I think you're going to, obviously, Gio Paez is a starting defensive tackle for you. JVR Suggs will rotate in. So you've gotten better. You have gotten better personnel-wise. You've certainly simplified things with scheme, and I think you just have a better overall feeling around this defense. They will be better. How much better, I don't know. But it may not manifest against USC. And the reason is Lincoln Riley. We can talk about everything that USC lost. We could talk about losing Heisman winner Caleb Williams. We could talk about losing running backs and offensive linemen and receivers. We could talk about losing all of that. But it just doesn't matter because the constant has been Lincoln Riley. And since Lincoln Riley started calling plays at East Carolina back in 2010, that constant has been proven to be an elite college football play caller, and elite high-level scoring offenses follow. I have a list, and you don't have to memorize it. There ain't going to be a test or anything. I'm just going to run through this so you can understand with context how good Lincoln Riley's offenses are, okay, and have been. Lincoln Riley first became a play caller in 2010 at East Carolina. They averaged 36.8 points per game, 2010. Remember, in 2010, LSU was still running around 3 yards in a cloud of dust, okay? 36.8 points per game. A year later, they averaged 26 and went down by 10, but that would be the low water mark of his career. Next year, went up to 31.5, then 40.2, then 35.8. Then Bob Stoops hired him. Goes to Oklahoma in 2015. 43.5 points per game. Then 43.9, then 45.1, then 48.4, then 42, then 43. And then in his final year at OU, 39. Gets the USC job. First year at SC, 41.3. Last year, 41.8. Y'all, to say this simply, since 2010, of course, Lincoln Riley's second year in 2011, they averaged 26.2. But since Lincoln Riley became an offensive coordinator after those first two seasons, there was only 2 times after Lincoln Riley's first 36, 26, 31, those first 3 years at East Carolina, there was only 2 times that Lincoln Riley's offenses have averaged under 40 points per game. 35.8 in 2014 at East Carolina and 39.1 his last season at Oklahoma. He's lost Heisman winners. He had a Heisman winner in Baker Mayfield. He had a Heisman winner in Kyler Murray. He had a Heisman finalist in Jalen Hurts. He had a Heisman winner in Caleb Williams now. He's had Heisman winners that he's lost before, and they don't miss a beat. because the constant is him. So LSU has a real significant challenge on its hands. Yes, because I think SC's got talented players and all that stuff, but mostly because Lincoln Riley has proven you can have as much turnover on a roster as you want. You can lose Heisman winning quarterbacks, and he's still going to come back and have elite level offenses. Now, that's not to say every game that Lincoln Riley has ever coached, his offenses have never missed a beat. I want you to consider this. A year ago, when USC's defense was very bad, we know, but there were 3 times that year, 3 times a year ago, where USC was held below 30 points. This is very important. They lost 48-20 at Notre Dame. They lost 36-27 at Oregon, and they lost 38-20 in their finale at UCLA. I should say against UCLA. The one constant in all of those games was USC's inability to run the football. I mentioned that game against UCLA when USC lost 38-20. They're crosstown rivals. By the way, you wonder why Dan Lin is now USC defensive coordinator Dan Lin instead of UCLA defensive coordinator Dan Lin? Last year, when UCLA beat USC 38-20 in the Coliseum, you know how many yards USC ran for in that game? You want to take a guess sitting in your car, at your desk, wherever you are? Just take a guess. How many yards did the Southern California Trojans run for against their crosstown rivals 1 year ago? Less than a year ago, actually, in calendar year. 3. 22 rushing attempts for 3 yards. You want to know how to beat USC? You want to know how to limit a Lincoln Riley offense? You stop them from running the football. You don't think the defensive line and the line of scrimmage matters to these coaches tremendously in this game? Lincoln Riley was on an episode at ESPN Los Angeles, a weekly interview he does there. And the guys on the panel asked him what position group was he most excited to see? Not offense, not defense, just what position group are you most excited to see against LSU? Listen to what he said.
You know, we've made obviously a lot of changes there. I mean, pretty much every single possible way you can change it. We've changed it from, you know, how we practice, certainly the size, the nutrition factor. You know, it's been well documented, obviously, the weight and the strength that we've put on these guys and that we've brought in. Certainly how we're playing, not just call-wise, but from a technique standpoint is very different as well. And so, yeah, to see us get a chance to go put that on display is important. And I think of any of the changes that have happened, that position room, it's been the most extreme. Yeah. And so I think naturally for me, that's the one that I'm most excited to see.
He was talking about USC's defensive line. That position group, the change has been the most extreme. You don't think that he knows? He watched Dan Lin hold his offense to 3 rushing yards and said, come here, from the Rose Bowl to the Coliseum, and whatever you did there to stop our offense from being capable of running the football at all, show me. Do that here. He understands the need to be able to control the line of scrimmage, which couldn't do a year ago. Similarly, if you're LSU, you're hoping Gio Paez and Jacobian Guillory and Sean Washington and Jalen Lee and JVR Suggs and Kimo Makanayoli and Dom McKinley, whoever's rotating there, that interior defensive line, you better be able to stop the run. Because if you can stop the run, then all of a sudden now you can pressure or drop coverage against Miller Moss and make his life even more difficult. The key to that game, we can talk all we want. Garrett Nussmeier, Miller Moss, which receivers are going to replace Brian Thomas and Malik Neighbors, all that stuff. The bottom line is this game will be controlled at the line of scrimmage. I think LSU's got a sincere advantage on its offensive line, but you heard Lincoln Riley say how much they've invested in that defensive line this offseason and the similar the similar is also true on the opposite side. Can LSU stop USC from running the ball and make Miller Moss beat them? That's key to the game. When teams have slowed Lincoln Riley's offense, it's because they've been able to stop them from running the football. Utah did it in the Big 12 championship game, or the Pac-12 championship game 2 years ago. That's LSU's charge. Stop USC from running the football, and you can win that football game. Okay. Now, if LSU does control clock, and if USC is able to limit LSU's offense, might see the Tigers punt a little bit. But who is going to do the punting for LSU? We still don't have that answer, but we're going to talk about it next. It's Locked on LSU, your team every day. Man, I am so fired up. Y'all, I'll be in that number coming up on Sunday. I'm there at Allegiant Stadium. I'll be watching LSU, USC. Man, if you want to get to that game or any game, you got to check out Game Time. If you have not downloaded the Game Time app yet after all this time, what are you waiting on? By the way, Game Time's got a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live event even easier. You can filter out the fluff, show incredible deals on great seats. You don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Right now, it's Game Time's 50% off Labor Day offer that we've been telling you about for Diamondbacks Dodgers. Look, if you're going out to LA or Las Vegas, you're going to be watching LSU and USC on Sunday. You want to hop over to Arizona for Diamondbacks Dodgers, you could do that on Labor Day. Check it out. Look, I'm excited to be there. I'll be there for LSU and USC. If you don't have tickets yet, get the Game Time app and get cranking right there. One of the things I love the most is that not only can you get curated deals to make it easier to get the best prices on the seats, you can also see your seat view before you buy, and it comes with the lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, job loss protection. They make it easy. They're sports fans. They understand it's Game Time. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets to your favorite live events with Game Time. So download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Again, terms apply. Create an account, redeem with the code LOCKEDONCollege. That's LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Oh, and by the way, if you're interested in wagering on LSU and USC, have you downloaded FanDuel yet? You've heard us talk a ton about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. You better believe you're going to be placing action on LSU and USC. You better get to FanDuel. But right now, we got a little something different for you with FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, so you got about a month, a little less than a month. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. So NFL season's about to begin. Get on this. Then with the YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account, current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. One more time, FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. That's FanDuel. So we are very excited, obviously, about these offenses. Both teams are going to see quarterbacks that have waited their turn, and I understand all the excitement about that. I was wearing a Nussbus shirt on this show earlier in the week. But SC fans are excited as well. And we're maybe a little cautiously optimistic about the defense, both teams. One thing we haven't talked a ton about is punter. And a lot of you may have laughed at me. If you care to, you can go back and you can find my pre-fall camp episode here where I listed the biggest questions of fall camp. And one of them I listed, and I said, don't you laugh at me, was punter. And I want to spell out why. Y'all, after the spring game, Brian Kelly said point blank that he had hoped that Peyton Todd would have won the job, but he wasn't nearly consistent enough. And he put actions behind his words. He went out and signed a transfer punter, Blake Oxendorf. Was at Central Michigan, spent last year at Louisiana Tech, now is a I think he's a 7th-year player now, Oxendorf. Anyway, playing his final year of college football at LSU and trying to win the job. And when Brian Kelly was asked 2 weeks ago about punter, he said, both are very talented, got strong legs, but we haven't seen consistency enough, and they may use them both. So Monday of game week, Brian Kelly again was asked about his punters and if he's made a decision. Give a listen to what he said.
I think from a tactical standpoint, limiting, his ability to field the football, right? I mean, we certainly want to stress their returns by not kicking it straight down the middle of the field. So, what is that, right? I mean, I think we've got two talented kickers. I think they both have the ability to impact the game. I think from our standpoint, I think we have some things that we can do that will allow both of them to impact the game. And it has a lot to do with, trying to keep the ball from, being kicked straight down the middle of the field and giving him an opportunity with space to return kicks.
Him is Zachariah Branch, USC's punt returner, who was a freshman All-America a season ago. And y'all, I don't think this has been talked about enough. Do you know how many times an LSU opponent returned a punt a year ago? I'm not talking about how many times LSU punted. How many times opponents returned a punt against LSU? We'll do this exercise again. If you're in your car, having your morning coffee, whatever you're doing right now, say it out loud. 13 games a year ago, how many times, not how many times LSU punt, how many times did an opponent return a punt? 2. 2 for -1 yard. As much as we have complained about special teams the past 2 years, and rightfully so, LSU has struggled mightily in the return game. They've struggled at times in the kicking game, blocking for PATs. One thing over the past 2 years that has been incredibly consistent was Jay Bramblett. When Brian Kelly in that soundbite talked about tactical things we can do, what he's talking about is placing punts where the opponent can't return it. Yeah, Zachariah Branch is a dangerous return man. You want to know how to prevent him from hurting you? Don't kick him the ball. But to do that, you have to have accurate punters. When Brian Kelly said there are advantages that both have, here's what I think he means, and this is a guess. I want to be very clear. This is a guess. I think Peyton Todd, I'm going to give you a golf analogy. Peyton Todd's the guy that could stand on the tee box and pump a driver 350 yards right down the middle. But if you put a wedge or a putter in his hand, he looks like a baby giraffe. I think Blake Oxendorf, meanwhile, is a guy who maybe isn't the best off the tee, but you give him a wedge, anything from inside 100 yards, it could be deadly. And so what I think they're going to do, I think this is what they're going to do. LSU's backed up at their own 17-yard line. They need to boom one to flip field. I think that's Peyton Todd. LSU drive stalls around midfield. You need a coffin corner kick to pin him inside the red zone. I think that's Blake Oxendorf. It's not to say Oxendorf can't boom him. We've seen him do it. I mean, I was watching him in fall camp when he kicked the ball 70 yards in the air. It would have been a 60-yard punt thereabouts. But he boomed one from where he kicked it, obviously then the distance of the line of scrimmage after catch, your few steps. I mean, it was about 70 yards in the air. He boomed one. He can do it. But I think he's the guy that if you need to coffin corner one, you need to angle kick, you need to keep one away from your, away from the return man. I think that's probably Oxendorf. That's probably, I think, how they divvied up here in the opener. We'll see. But Zachariah Branch is a dangerous return man. So is Xavier Thomas. Xavier Thomas was a freshman All-America 2 years ago at Mississippi State. Zachariah Branch was a freshman All-America last year at USC as a returner. So both teams have guys that can be dangerous return men. For LSU, the key is going to be you have to do what Jay Bramblett was so successful at doing. That's preventing your opponent from even having an opportunity to return the football. So when Sunday night comes and an LSU drive stalls, don't get up and go take a leak or grab a beer. Stay you behind in your seat because you could see fireworks, and you better hold your breath and pray too. All right. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. We're thrilled to have you aboard with us here. I want to wrap up. It's our opportunity, our weekly visit with Shea Dixon on 3 the Bengal Tiger. A huge opportunity for LSU on a national stage. What does that mean from a recruiting perspective? And with the Tigers missing on Jonah Williams, are they done at safety? We'll talk about that as we wrap up next. Locked on LSU, your team every day. Man, I am so pleased to be able to tell you about our friends over at 5 Hour Energy, a great new partner here on Locked on LSU. Whether you're going to be watching the game on Sunday night and you need to stay up late, maybe it's that 2 o'clock feeling when you're at work, you need to try 5 Hour Energy. I'll tell you this, maybe you're at work, you get tired after lunch. Maybe it's before your workout. Tons of reasons to try 5 Hour Energy. I have, for as long as I've done radio, as long as I've done my current show, but almost 14 years now, I created a habit of taking a 5 Hour Energy before every show. The amount of energy it takes to do a 3-hour talk show, to stay focused and energetic throughout, is challenging, especially after a long day. You ramp up starting at 3 o'clock when a lot of people have that afternoon lull. And 5 Hour Energy has been a go-to. One of the things I love about it, it gives me energy but intense focus as well. It gives me mental clarity and sharpness to be able to make it through a 3-hour show. So if you've never tried it, I'll tell you the other thing I love. There's no sugar, and it's very low calories, but also it's so easy. I mean, you take it in seconds. I mean, it's a shot. You just take the shot, swallow it, and boom, it works within seconds as well. So my show's at 3 o'clock. I would take my 5 Hour Energy shot around 2:55 and be ready to roll. Highly recommend you give it a go. So grab a 5 Hour Energy, get that alert feeling, that focus you need to get in the zone and get through your day. So what I would recommend you do, go to 5hourenergy.com. That's the number 5, 5hourenergy.com. And get some 5 Hour Energy product today. You can use our promo code LOCKEDONCFB. That's LOCKEDONCFB, and receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Go to 5hourenergy.com. That's the number 5, 5hourenergy.com. We have the pleasure every week to visit with Shea Dixon of On 3 the Bengal Tiger here on Locked on LSU. I had the chance to visit with Shea on my radio show, and so share some of the highlights that he gave us. And I wanted to ask Shea the importance of this game against USC from a recruiting perspective. Now, it is a neutral site game, so Shea kind of explained, whether or not you can have interaction with recruits and all, but it's such a marquee event and opportunity in recruiting.
Neutral site, so both teams can give tickets or have tickets requested by recruits, but you will not be able to have them on the sidelines or interact with them. But like I said, they can get tickets and get to the game if they're able to make it. And LSU will have, as I wrote in the article, 3 players there, at least 3, who are ranked number 1 in their state, including Louisiana's number 1 player for next year, who also happens to be the number 1 overall prospect in the entire country, a D lineman named Jakeem Stewart out of St. Aug. He's probably been a household name. He was kind of like Fournette coming out of St. Aug, where everybody knew who he was in 8th grade, and he was getting offers and all of that. And now he's headed into his junior season, and the very first game he's going to see is this LSU-USC one, which USC is also a team that's heavily in the mix for him. So it will be good to have him in the stands for that one, obviously, and even better if they get a win. As to your question of what kind of impact could this have, whether recruits are there or watching on TV, given it will be the only game on at the time. A lot of guys will be tuned in and certainly to see the result. And I don't think that much of one, because I look at LSU having lost, let's just make it the Kelly era, but the past 2 season openers to FSU in time games, in slots where it was the only game going on, and they end the year with top 5 recruiting classes. So they're ranked number 3 right now. Most of the classes put together. I don't think this has any major impact one way or the other, and I've always said that about one game. And I've said it before that LSU can sign 28 kids, and unless they went undefeated or lost one game, you could poll them on what the record was and who they lost to, and 15% of the kids would get it right. I mean, I just don't think many guys, prospects, view it the same lens as a diehard fan does.
I shared a story as well. I remember, I'll do this quickly, in the 2011 championship game, of course, which LSU lost to Alabama. They had media day, and the media day was in the Superdome on the field. So they had tables set up, and all the players sat at tables and were available for interviews. And Sam Montgomery, the All-American defensive end from LSU, was asked by some Alabama media about Bear Bryant. And Sam said something to the effect of, who does he play for? I don't remember watching film on him. He had no idea who Bear Bryant was. And a lot of the Alabama media took it as a slight, like they were incensed. And I said, no, you don't understand. First of all, Bear Bryant died in 1982. That was a decade before Sam Montgomery was born. And Sam Montgomery is a kid from South Carolina who loves basketball and plays Sonic the Hedgehog video games all day. Like, he has no awareness of who Bear Bryant is or the history of college football. Recruits look at it differently, always have, than the way fans do. One more from Shea. Of course, Jonah Williams, the safety out of Galveston, picked Texas over the weekend. So I asked Shea, with that swing and miss, is LSU done at safety, or are they still looking at that position?
I think that they very smartly took an approach to where they got Jace Thomas. Like, Jace Thomas's dad played in the NFL. Jace Thomas is a kid who's only played a year of DB, and he's playing for Destrehan, one of the best schools in the state, and starting, and has some great testing numbers. So you add arguably the best safety in Louisiana, you've got him committed. Then they went to Tennessee and got the best safety in the state, and CJ Jim Coyley, who his dad grew up in New Orleans. Frank Wilson had connections there. You add a 4-star safety who's got serious upside and a real high IQ guy, a guy who I think one day will probably, even if he doesn't play safety, he can play linebacker, and he's your next Greg Penn or whomever is out there kind of running the defense for you. So you needed 2 safeties this cycle because we've talked about it before. You've got Jacob Bradford, best safety, Blaine Bradford, Jacob this class. Blaine Bradford next year, one of the best safeties in the country, number 1 on 3 right now, and he's out there. I think that ultimately he probably does end up at LSU, and a commitment from Aiden Hall's already in out of Edna Card. He's a top 5 safety, and then we saw what they have as true freshmen that they've just brought in with guys like Deshaun Spears, and then even Kylan Jackson, who's entering year 2 as a redshirt freshman, and others. So this felt like a sandwich year where it was like, hey, go get good players that don't have to start, but you can develop, and that you feel like have high upside. So then you could swing for the fences on a Jonah Williams. Well, no big deal if you miss because you had a couple of guys. I will say, and I've already said his name, I think they can flip Jacob Bradford. He's committed to Houston. He's got an offer. Plays here at Catholic High, obviously.
Sorry, I had to.
And is someone, hey, look, he's someone the staff feels like is a good enough player to join the roster, develop him, and he'll stick around. He won't hit the portal, and then you'll be able to have a guy who in a couple of years is giving you reps. So, like I said, when you've got the built-in talent that Louisiana does, and the roster expands from 85 to 105 in scholarships, depending on how you want to disperse them out, if you want to go to that number or not, you've got the ability built in to just say, let's take more Louisiana guys, because how often do we see Jacob Bradford go to Houston and have a great career, or whomever go to whatever school, and, Dontavian Wicks out of Plaquemine goes to Virginia and plays for a few years, and he looks really good, and he gets drafted in the 3rd round, and now he starts for the Packers. Like, it's one of those things where I think that a state like Louisiana or a school like LSU benefits maybe more than anybody when it comes to expanding a roster and then taking the approach of, let's stick kind of within driving range here of 4 to 7 hours, to Dallas of guys that we really want to build our roster around.
Great perspective there from Shea. You mentioned Jacob Bradford. Think about a guy like Jark Bernard Converse from Evangel, right on the borderline of being an LSU offer, decides, LSU didn't give the offer, goes to Oklahoma State, starts for 4 years, has the COVID year, plays 1 season at LSU. Now he's doing great with the Jets. The state's littered with examples. Guys that would have loved to have gone to LSU, didn't get the offer out of high school, went elsewhere. And now with the portal, they come back maybe for a year or 2, But what if you could have them in your program for 4 or 5 years, grow them, develop them, and maximize them in Baton Rouge the entire time? That's kind of what Shea's alluding to there. We'll see if it changes. Okay, y'all, that'll do it for us here on this edition of Locked On LSU. Thanks so much for being here. Of course, thanks for making us your first listen today. Now go check out Locked On College Football. From NIL deals to the never-ending conference realignment rumors, Spencer McLaughlin gets you ready for an exciting season on the gridiron. The episode for Locked On College Football is pinned in the description. It's linked in the description, so you don't even need to search for it. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Okay, that'll do it for us here. Do me a favor, smash that like button if you're on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell. If you're on podcast listening, please subscribe on your favorite podcast app, rate us, leave a review, let a friend know if they love the Tigers. We got you here every single day for Locked On LSU, your team every day.